Hi, I'm Marisa. I'm from Tasmania, Australia, and I'm a contemporary jeweller and sculptor, and I'm here for the month of May at the Fish Factory. I'm really interested in islands, and I find them fascinating. My family come from 3 different islands in Greece, originally. And Australia's an island, and Tasmania is an island, so I'm just constantly obsessed with islands. And I like the remoteness, and I like that there's a coastline that kind of isolates the land, and I guess that's my focus. So that's why I looked at a map, and I'm living in Norway at the moment, and even though maybe it's a little bit like Iceland, I kind of thought the fact that Iceland's an island, completely remote, and also the geology and the whole makeup of this place is completely unique, so I had to come. And I came a few years ago and thought it was like nowhere else. But I did notice that the beaches were really clean, so I knew that my process would be very different compared to Tasmania. So when I've come here and I've done a lot of hiking, like I've gone up to a few peaks, and I walked to the glacier and around there. And what I've realised about Iceland, and it was like an epiphany the other day. So it was like, Iceland is not falling apart, but like it's made of these like fragmented components. Like the glacier is constantly breaking off and washing away or melting, and the silfra, like the tectonic plates, are like every year moving 2 centimeters apart, and everything's shifting and moving, and the volcanoes like creating new landmass. And like when you look at the map, you're looking at old rock and new rock, and so it's living and it's moving, and it's even when you look at a mountain, it looks so solid, but when you get up, it's just made from tiny little fragments. So even though my process is like lost fragments around the coastline, I feel like Iceland has really shifted my focus to be all these different fragments that make up the landscape. But it can be broken down just to like tiny little intimate pieces. So I've come to Iceland to walk the shorelines. I've done this at a few other residencies in Australia, in King Island and Flinders Island. And Tasmania is an island itself, and so what I tend to do is walk the shorelines and gather whatever is washed up. And I kind of feel like it's an interesting reflection on the island as well, what's displaced, whether it be by the tide, the wind, what people leave behind. And I gather it all up, I take moulds, and I translate that into wearable jewellery and sculpture. And I have come to Iceland to do the same thing, although Iceland is a little bit too big to walk around. I focus mostly on the shoreline of the east coast, but also instead of collecting what's on the ground, I've actually started to look at what the shoreline is made from here, because there's actually not that much washed up. Like there's a lot of plastic, and there's bones and kelp and seaweed, but there hasn't been, I guess, a rich, diverse amount of textures that I'm used to. So I've actually looked at the geology of Iceland, which has been amazing. So now I'm a little bit obsessed. Not that I know what anything is yet, but I visited the Rock Museum, and they were kind enough to let me take moulds there. And yeah. So this, for example, I've taken, I found this rock quite close to the glacier, and then I've come back into the studio and I've taken a mould of it. And then I pour wax And this particular wax is quite brittle. And then I have the positive. And then from this, I'll either cast it straight into silver, or I'll manipulate it a little bit in wax once I've kind of worked out where it would be really interesting to be worn. And I've done it with a few other forms as well. I think outside there is some whalebone vertebrae, just outside the studio. And then this is, and I've got the positive here, this is killer whale disc in between the vertebrae of a killer whale, which is pretty cool. So people have been kindly allowing me to take molds of their collections, which has been really amazing because I don't think I'd be able to find all of this. Yeah, so the Fish Factory is by far the most unique in comparison to some of the residencies I've done before. So in Flinders Island and King Island, I've been quite remote. I've been the only artist there, and often, you know, I haven't seen anyone for weeks. So here, the fact that you like live in a share house and the factory, everyone is an artist and everyone's working every day and night. Like, it's really quite a community environment, and you're just in it straight away. There's not like an initiation where it takes you a while to get comfortable. You actually just arrive and you're given a space and then you just go to it. And there seems to be no rules here. Like, there's a lot of freedom. When comparing this residency to the ones in Australia and the ones in Norway, I find this is probably the most social of any residency I've ever been to. These are my melting point series, and this is pretty much my process of recycling. So all my offcuts I tend to melt, and so just as the silver gets to the melting point, it fuses together, and then I make a whole series. Like, I could make 100 earrings in a day, and the whole point is they're mismatching, and each one's unique.